Hello and welcome to screencast number 7 on chapter 24, Sustainable Solutions, and this is Apes. And as you know, we were talking about green technologies. And one of the things that we have to be really concerned about is the short-sighted uses of this technology. We, when we initially started to build the turbines, when we started to do the solar panels, these were huge, expensive. We were using materials that were produced by fossil fuels. So we had to look for another way of being able to make these so that they would be efficient. So we're now at a stage where we're more wisely developing this green technology, and we're sharing this. One country develops one system, they share it with another country, and that's what the Paris Protocol was all about. Developed countries have exported technologies to developing countries, and this is intensifying their impacts. And the technology is being used to mitigate environmental impacts, to reduce those, and pollution controls and green energy generation are also being considered in the producing. Environmental systems, what we're learning and what you do know, operate on cycles. We're going to be talking about those biogeochemical cycles. These cycles have feedback loops that help to circulate the material and the flow of material. We have to understand how those systems work, and we need to see how we can recycle the output of those systems into the input. Human systems that we use are linear. The raw materials are processed and we generate those into waste. And these linear pathways, if we put them into environmental systems, they can be transformed into circular ones through recycling. And we have to take human systems from being linear and put them into the cycles. Virtually all products can be recycled if we are given the right technology, and we're developing that technology. So the ultimate vision is to create a closed loop process that doesn't generate any waste, that uses that waste for our quality of life, our economic standards that we need. Local self-sufficiency builds sustainable societies. You'll see your local governments, they have all different types of programs in place to help with this. People closely tied to an area tend to value it and seek to sustain its environment and human community. When you're meeting the local needs, this cuts down on the energy expended in shipping, particularly with food. So, you know, we're buying a lot of our produce from vegetable stands, and this is meeting those local needs. There are critics that are always going to be around, and they are critics of globalization, and they object to the homogenization of the world societies. They don't want it all to be the same way. They want to have their own independent cultures and all of that. We're seeing languages are vanishing. Everybody's really learning to speak English as a second language. Traditional ways of life are also being abandoned, and we're seeing countries fighting to keep those traditions, but we are seeing traditions being abandoned. Large multinational corporations are obtaining growing power over global trade, and again, critics are arguing that they promote high consumption lifestyles but not environmental protection. So there are protests that go on against globalization, and the World Trade Organization meeting in 1999 has seen just an expansion of these protests. Globalization does bring some positive aspects. Communication and learning between cultures has made us more likely to celebrate our differences, and the spread of Western democracy also allows entrepreneurship and encourages creativity in the arts and sciences and in education. So here's a picture that is showing uh, logging and it's protesters that were at the World Trade Organization meeting in Seattle, and they were criticizing the homogenizing effects of globalization as well as relaxations in labor and environmental protections that were brought about by free trade. So there's systemic solutions that can happen. We can address the symptoms, and then we can address the root cause. And if we look at the symptoms one by one, it's often easier to solve them one by one than trying to look at the whole problem. We need to adopt a more systemic approach. We do need to see the sum, but we need to know that that sum comes from different parts. And that part addresses the root cause. We need to reach further for new fossil fuel sources. Again, we're depleting energy supplies. I think it's 54 years before we use our oil up. So we don't have, that's your lifetime, ladies. We don't have much more of those fossil fuels left. We can switch to renewable energy resources so that we don't deplete those fossil fuels. We must base our decisions on long-term thinking. The best long-term solution is not the best short-term one. So we've got to look at a way that is sustainable for both the short-term and the long-term. Policymakers have to act for the short-term good, and they have to make sure that this is going to be able to continue in the future. We want quick results. That's one of the things that we look for, but we need to make sure that these results are going to stay. And environmental problems are going to be cumulative. It's not just going to go away because we fix one. We've got to fix the others. They worsen gradually and they need long periods to be resolved. And the cost of solving problems are short-term, but the benefits of solving them are long-term. We can magnify our influence by educating and serving as role models through our actions. So what are you going to do this year as far as your campus sustainability efforts? How are your actions going to model the students here at Gwinnett to make sustainable choices? Environmental science provides information that people can use to make wise decisions about issues. How are you going to get that information out there? And scientific research and education can help us find sustainable solutions. We have to act now. Our time is limited. The natural systems are depending on us to change, and they don't change back rapidly. Human impacts because of population growth are intensifying. We are using up our land by deforestation, overfishing, wetland loss, resource extraction, climate change, and our window of opportunity to turn these trends around is very short. We need to find time to implement solutions before we do irreparable harm. President Kennedy created NASA in 1961, the year I was born, at the prospect of losing the space race to the moon. And the technology to get to the moon did not exist, but the nation rallied behind the goal and provided support for the development of the technology. We need to take on that mentality. We have a challenge that's more important than any previous one, and that is to achieve sustainability. It is larger and more complex than going to the moon, and we've got to get government, industry, and citizens all on the same board, same plane. Human ingenuity is capable of sustainability. We need to rally to the public to resolve and engage governments. There's President Kennedy. We must think of the Earth as an island, and it is. And the island can be a paradise, or they can have resources depleted and the environment degraded. It would be folly to allow the latter for the planet as a whole, and we can live happily ever after and sustainably if we recognize this. We need to modify our individual behavior and cultural institutions to encourage sustainable practices and employ science to achieve these ends. There's our island. It's not very big and we need to protect it. So, a society facing the dwindling resource and environmental degradation, we need to raise the alarms. We can't ignore them. We need to gain detailed knowledge and understanding of our dynamic planet, and we need to make technology available so that we can live for many, 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 many more generations. What our planet has to offer, we can't bear to lose. All right. The challenge for society today is to support that science, so we may distinguish false alarms from real problems and legitimate concerns from thoughtless denial. That ends chapter 24, and then we're going to go, I believe, to chapter 6. Have a good one.